All right, that took a bit of time to get set up today. I'm on my Sunday ride or Saturday ride, which is my long ride. So it's just loading right now on Ruby. And there they are. 3, 2, 1, let's go. So I've got a hour and 45-minute long ride on a Sunday. I woke up this morning super, man, a little bit heavier than I thought I wanted to be, or I do want to be. Not that I thought it, a little heavier than I should be. I don't get it because I'm working out like crazy. And then, of course, the app told me I need to take it easy again today. And then, of course, I'm like, man, I feel tired. I feel sore. I don't want to get on the bike. Why am I doing this? I'm not even 2 weeks done into the program yet. And it's like, an hour 45, and I'm not seeing progress after a week and 5 days, and all this stuff starts going through your head as you're, getting going. And then, of course, some time in front of the TV, watching YouTube and looking at some of the Southern California stuff, checking out Century City, and then getting, I just remembered before the ride, you know what, I better get some nutrition. So I went and made myself get some rye bread, which is in Ontario now. They have this rye bread that's coming from Winnipeg, which I grew up in Winnipeg. So it was like a favorite. And the fact that we can get it now is great. So I had some rye bread, get the old chunky peanut butter on there, get some little energy before the ride, get load up with some electrolyte drink. You know what? I need to read that package. What's it called? Skedaddle or whatever. Anyway, I can't recall. So here I am. I'm starting my ride. I'm doing the Copenhagen Ironman course. Looks fairly flat. So I've been thinking about the vlog and different formats. I haven't yet hit the stride or anything like that, but I've been thinking about changing the name slightly to Retraining Pain After 60, because I don't think this channel, it may be of interest to younger people, but I'm not really sure how much. But one of the things, I made a list the other morning of all of the different things that would be worth talking about, maybe some learnings that I've had or things that I regret, that sort of thing. And I thought what might be a fun little story is about the time I ran away from home to go to California, to make my way in California. So I was 15 years old, and I don't know what the situation was. My mom and I got in some sort of an argument, or my mom and my dad. I really can't recall the details, but I do remember that I was working out at the downtown YMCA with all the heavy-duty bodybuilders in the basement. And I mentioned to one of the guys, that I had no place to stay, or that, do you know someone had a place to stay? And he says, hey, you could stay at my place. So he lived in an area called Osborne Village. And I guess he was renting a house there. He was a nice enough guy. To me, he was older. I look back now, he was probably 24, 25. But he seemed a lot older because I was 15. And so I stayed at his house for a few nights, and there wasn't a bedroom available, and he had this old house, and in the front of the house there was like this little nook, or I want to say almost like a turret, and it had like a flat pad there. So I slept basically a windowsill. That's what it was, like a windowsill that went out. Very old house, like a very crappy house. So I spent a few days there. And I had been planning to go to the United States for some time. And I don't know why, and I've been racking my brain. Why California? What did I plan on doing when I got there? I can't recall. I know it had nothing to do with I'm going to be a movie star or anything. It was just that I felt California was a place that it was just drawing me. So, and actually I had a guy at the Y who was a truck driver. He heard I wanted to go to California, and he had as a semi-truck driver, he offered to drive me down he was going to Vancouver. And I don't know why, but he seemed like a decent enough guy. And I just said, no, I'm going to go a different way. And I look back now and I go, why wouldn't I have taken the guy up on a ride from Winnipeg, middle of Canada, all the way to Vancouver? And then I would have just had to go down from Vancouver to Los Angeles. I don't understand why I didn't do that. Anyway, it wasn't a knee-jerk reaction that I wanted to run away and start my life in California and Los Angeles. I'd actually planned for it. And at that time, I was reading a book called Catch Me If You Can by Frank Abagnale Jr. And they made a movie about it with Leonardo DiCaprio. And the movie was about Frank Abagnale Jr. as a guy 16 years old, 15, 16, and his adventures of how he ran away from home and he started embezzling, or not embezzling, but he opened up fake checking accounts and became a pilot and started cashing checks all over the place, a fake pilot. And then he became a fake doctor and a whole bunch of other stuff, which I found out as a sidebar, it's all fake. They caught him 3 or 4 years ago that actually what he was saying wasn't true. So anyway, but at the time, I thought it was true. And so what I thought was, hey, I'm going to be the next Frank Abagnale Jr. So I had a friend of mine, really good friend, who I needed to get some identification to open up a bank account, to get a checking account. And now this was way back in the day. So my friend, who as a true friend is, he was in gym class. Everyone went out. Everyone had their clothes hanging in the locker room. And he found a pair of pants that had the guy's ID. It had his, it wasn't a license at the time because we weren't that old yet, but it had his ID. And so he took it. And as a good friend, he gave it to me because he knew my plan. And so I went to the bank and I opened up a checking account and got these checks. And that's what I was going to use to write checks on my way to the US, or at least that's what I thought. Again, it's a little foggy in terms of what my plan was. So anyway, D-Day came. I had a couple of other friends, good friends, that I told them what I was going to do. And these friends were ultra conservative. I was kind of the leader of the pack. Always figured out what we were going to do, where we were going to go. They were pretty reserved. And they were freaking out. They were like, man, don't do it. It's not a good thing. And I was like, just thinking, hey, you guys are just being negative. You're Debbie Downers. And then my other friend who got me the idea, he was like all supportive, like, hey man, go for it. So actually, my friend that told me I should go for it, his name is Peter. So Peter actually gave me a ride to basically the end of Winnipeg. And so I got to the end of Winnipeg, and there's the Emerson border is the border that is the closest from Winnipeg. And that border is probably Don't quote me on it, but an hour drive away. So maybe 60 miles, whatever. So prior to leaving though, and to get ready, is I took my checks and I went to a local grocery store and I picked up some supplies. So it was the weirdest stuff. I remember it was I think it was $30 worth of supplies, which at that time would have been a lot of money. And I had an Adidas, one of those, for those that are older, those old Adidas bags with a handle, and they're retro now. I saw one recently, they're selling them for like $100. Back then they were nothing. So I went to this grocery store and I remember buying like chips, taco chips, and some of the strange things I bought were shaving cream, razors. I'm like 15, I think I was sprouting up a mustache then, but it was just a whole bunch of stuff that, I look back, whatever. It was a little bit of food and, and some shaving stuff. I think it was $30. Might have been 15. Anyway, so I get to the front to pay for it. And I guess they thought maybe there was something up because the cashier had the manager come over, and the manager asks me for ID. So I pull out this fake ID that Peter helped me get. And he's really looking at the ID. He's looking at the checks. He's looking at the ID. He's looking at the checks. And he knows something's wrong. And but he just couldn't put his finger on it. So he ends up saying, hey, okay, here. And he may have made a comment. And so anyway, I thought, okay, this is my first Frank Abagnale Jr. catch me if you can moment. I just passed the check at the local supermarket. So fast forward, I get dropped off. I think I was dropped off by Peter at the end of Winnipeg. If not, he dropped me off somewhere and I took a bus, and maybe the bus dropped me off in St. Norbert, wherever the last stop was. So I got out. I've got my bag with me, my shaving cream, my eats, and it was now it's time to trek down to the border. And so back in that era, hitchhiking was common. So I started thumbing it, and a car would stop, it would pick me up. Where are you going? I had this bullshit story that I was from Michigan and I'm on my way back home, and just a whole host of lies. I think I had 2 or 3 people pick me up. One guy, most of the rides were pretty short, and then I had one guy that was able to give me a pretty long drive, but I did a lot of walking, so I would have, whatever time it was when I started, probably would have been like, let's say 4 o'clock. By the time I hitchhiked and I walked and I got to the border, it was late. It was like 11 o'clock. It was dark. It could have been, I'm pretty sure it was that time. And it was around if I'm not incorrect, it was kind of around springtime. So it wasn't cold out. And the reason I know it was springtime is because the way I got caught, it was explained to me by the border guards. So I get to the border and there's truckers that are trying to go through, and I'm asking them, hey, do you mind giving me a ride across the border? I was hitchhiking, and so nobody was giving me a ride. So I decided, okay, well, I can't go through the border. They're going to see me, so I need to go around it. So there's, a railroad track that I started following around the back of it. And as I'm walking along, I'm thinking, oh man, it's getting late. Should I keep going or should I lie down and, fall asleep here by the railroad tracks and then start my journey off in the morning? So I decided, okay, well, I'm going to lie down here and I'm going to do my journey in the morning. And that lasted about 15 minutes. I'm lying there in the middle of nowhere, basically at the side of a railroad trestle. I think I opened my bag up, started eating some taco chips, or whatever they were, Doritos. And about 15 minutes goes by and I'm not sleepy, and I go, okay, well, I'm just going to make it. I'm going to go for it now. So I start walking, and I do get across the border because I'm seeing, as I walk around, there's the lights of the building. But, and this is where stupidity came in, for some reason, I thought the building was farther and there was another building. And I don't know what I was thinking, that if I got to that second building, that turns out to be part of immigration's building, that I was going to hop a ride with someone. So needless to say, the border guard saw me. And in fact, they knew I was around because one of the truck drivers, semi-truck drivers, who was driving, who I had asked for a ride across, had mentioned to them, hey, there's some young kid who's trying to hitch a ride to go across the border. And so when they ended up catching me, they said to me that they knew I was there, but they had been fairly busy. But they also said, you came at the perfect time to sneak across the border, because I guess they have cameras or sensors that are set up for movement when people go across the border. And so anyway, I picked the right time. Not that it mattered, because they picked me up. So they picked me up, and they were nice enough guys, US border. They put me in a room and they start questioning me in terms of, why are you here? Why are you running away? What's your plan? And I told them I'm wanting to go to California. And then they start getting into, what are your motives? What's your home life like? And are you an abused child? Does your father, beat on you? Are you molested? They go through all this stuff. And I'm kind of tearing up a bit. And then I still have my Adidas bag with my food in there and my shaving cream. And so I start eating some of my Doritos. The guys were really nice. So of course they say, well, we need to call your parents to have them pick you up. And so I give them the number, and they call them. And now for them to come down to the border, like I said, in terms of a drive, it's about an hour all the way straight through. So as I'm waiting, the one thing I did, and I don't know why I did it, maybe I anticipated I was going to get caught, is the fake ID that I had. I actually left it by the train tracks, as opposed to taking it with me. And I don't know why. And I often thought back that if anyone went back there and found that ID, they would call the kid at that school, and maybe I'd get caught somehow, that they would, how did this guy get your ID? And Peter would be caught in the middle, but that never happened. But it was something I thought about. Again, I was 15. So my dad got there, and I guess, and he'd be better to explain this, but this is my memory of it. It may not be exact his memory of it, but I know he wasn't happy at all on the drive back. But it was an interesting, he came in and I guess they took him in another room and they didn't believe me that I was abused or whatever. And so from my understanding, at least in my mind, from what I remember hearing, is that they were interrogating him. Like, what are you doing to this kid? Why does this kid want to run away? All this sort of stuff. So anyway, I kept my story, which was true. They asked, did your dad? No. Why do you want to go? I want to, in my mind, I just want to find my fame and fortune. And so eventually they let me go, let my dad drive me home. My mother was there. I remember my dad was driving my mom's car, which eventually became my car. And my mom was in the passenger seat. My mom was talking to me, but my dad didn't say a word, which was really unusual because normally if we did something like that, we definitely get an earful of, that we weren't, we get an earful, whatever. He wouldn't be happy, and why would you do that? Well, it was complete silence, which was interesting. So anyway, I got caught and I got back home, and I was always surprised because I'd already been away for like a few days, and I can't recall, like I was sleeping at some guy's house from the Y, and there was no alarm on my parents' side. I don't know if they knew I was gone or what, or maybe it was just that era, because we were the era where we went out at parents, we went out on a Saturday, we survived the playground of the 70s. I remember leaving Saturday mornings on your bike after cartoons, and then you wouldn't be back until dinner time. Or the big thing is you got to be home when the street lights are on. That was a rule of all of us kids in that era. And we would go on these amazing adventures. So I don't know if it was just my parents were like that era, like maybe they didn't even notice I was gone. I don't know. I'm sure they did. But my mom and I would have some tiffs every once in a while. She kicked me out when I was 17 or 18. That's another good story, which I'll get into another time. But anyway, got back home. My California dreaming didn't happen. And I often think back to, what would my life have been like had I made it? And then I think back to, I watch a lot of serial killer shows, and the era that I ran away would have been, what would it have been? About 1979, 1980. So it was like your prime serial killers, California, West Coast time. You had guys like Ted Bundy running around. You had in Houston the Candyman, who was killing young boys. You had those two guys that were also killing young boys. What was their names? They escaped me, but I mean, there's just so many of them. And just recently, I was thinking, well, what if I would have gotten away with it? And I got down to California, and I was thinking before I even got there, how would I have got there? Like I was thinking, was I thinking I was going to just jump on trains? Was I thinking I was going to hitchhike? We ended up driving to Los Angeles last year. It took us 5 days from Toronto, and Winnipeg wouldn't have been much longer, at least 4, in a car driving 10 to 12 hours a day. So I could only imagine what what would that trip have looked like? How would I have gotten there? And then I think, well, when I get there, what would I do? Like, where would I have gone? Do you go to a bus station, which, is a praying ground for people, because you might get a bus ticket somewhere, maybe I'd be writing checks. But then I thought, well, I left the ID by the railroad track. So I'm like, man, it was great. I had no plan, and that was the plan, but I had a destination. This is where I was going to go, where I wanted to be, and I didn't make it. And I look back now and I go, yeah, what would my life have looked like? Would I have gotten down there and maybe one of these serial killer guys would have picked me up in a van when I was hitchhiking and tortured me, and I may have been a victim? I don't know. But it's one of those things that I have mixed feelings. Like, I think it would have been cool for, I look back, I go, well, should I have taken that ride in that semi-truck to Vancouver? And then I thought, I had a weird feeling. Maybe the guy was a molester or something. I don't know. He seemed all right. But that would have been funny if I did make it to Vancouver and they caught me at the border going into Washington from Vancouver, and gave my parents a call and said, hey, we got your son. Please come pick him up. And I was in Vancouver. That would have been a riot. I know it sounds sick, right? But it was a different relationship my parents and I had at that time. Typical me being rebellious and them being over strict. So, although we really didn't get in trouble, me and my brother, who were not little angels, any trouble we did get in, we definitely deserved it. And we did get the smacks, the belt or the kitchen cord. We did get that on the backside when we did bad. And but it was never when we didn't deserve it or didn't really get too abusive. But it was it was the childhood that I was dealing with. So if I would have got caught, I kind of would have almost wore it as a badge of honor that I had to put them out of their way. Gives you some insight into my psyche at that time. So I look at it, and we're on our way. Yes, last year we went to Los Angeles, Alice and I, which in a way, I've got to say, me getting caught at the border, I know what I would have lost, but I can't tell you what I would have gained if I made it to California. If I would have made it to California, the chances are that I would not have met Alice, because the year that I ran away, I forgot to mention, I had quit school. So I was in, at that point, the 10th grade, and or the 11th grade rather. I quit school, and so I had I not quit school, had I not got caught at the border, I would not have went to the high school that Alice was going to, Miles Mac, and I wouldn't have met Alice. And had I not met Alice, I wouldn't have had the life that I've had, which has definitely been a blessing. And I wouldn't have had the kids that I have, which have been a blessing. And the one thing I know is by not crossing that border, my life has been pretty good, pretty safe. I'll get into other videos where I have a number of regrets. I know people say, oh, I don't regret anything because what's happened to me has made me the person that I am today. And I can tell you, I do have a number of regrets. And in a way, getting caught at the border, or maybe I knew I was going to get caught because I left the ID there. And maybe it was a self-fulfilling prophecy. I don't know, but I can't remember that far back. But that was my situation. And that last year, we decided, I finally made it to California. And we decided for the first time in our lives, 59 years old last year, and decided, okay, let's go to California and spend 3 months over the winter months. And it happened fast. Similar to all of my plans, is it wasn't like we had pre-planned this months in advance or anything like that. It was more of a random, you know what, let's go to California. I saw an Airbnb in the Hollywood Hills, the lower part of the Hollywood Hills. The price was amazingly good. And I thought, this is too good to be true. Turned out that they just started putting the house on Airbnb, so they didn't have any reviews. I think they had one person stay at the house before us. We were the second people, so the price was pretty good. And we decided, basically, like either it was on Christmas, the day before Christmas, the week of Christmas, Boxing Day, the day after Christmas, but we decided, let's do it. And so at work, our offices are closed between Christmas and New Year's, and we loaded up the truck. My son has decided to come as well. He's trying to break in to be a director. We thought, hey, kill two birds with one stone. We'll get the winter to have no snow, and our son will get a chance to just experience Los Angeles. So we went for 3 months. And those 3 months, the minute we got there, and those 3 months were just incredible. And Los Angeles felt just like home to us, or at least to myself. And then Alice was, not sure what it'd be like to be away and out of her routine and things like that. And she enjoyed it as well, so much so that when we got back, it was like, we have to go back again. And right when we got back, we found another place in Newport Beach, and we figured, Hollywood was great, really enjoyed it. Got into it as if we lived there, because it was a long enough period of time. And then we decided, let's try somewhere else. Orange County looks like a good place. And then I found a place, again, a really good deal for an Airbnb in Newport Beach. And Newport Beach is one of the most expensive areas to own a house in all of California, and all of, you can even put it up there in the whole US. And we found a place on Balboa Island. And it's interesting, the rate that we got, they must have known they gave a great rate, or we're at a moment of weakness, because we couldn't get anywhere near that now if we wanted to extend our time there. So the other reason we wanted to try Newport Beach in Orange County is I want to do some bike riding. And when we went to Hollywood, we were in the Hollywood Hills. I was a little nervous to ride my bike there, and it ended up, I think I rode 3 or 4 times, and we were near Griffith Park, so that was 3 times. But so anyway, I look back now and I go, geez, California is so beautiful. Southern California feels so natural to me. I look at wanting to move there The house pricing is through the roof now. Taxes are through the roof now. And to move there is so expensive. Not that that wouldn't prevent me. And I still have that as a bucket list to move there full time, leave Canada. That's a whole nother story. But I think back, what if I would have made it there when I ran away? And let's say I avoided the pitfalls of, getting killed by a serial killer. And I was and is very entrepreneurial. And as you can tell, a bit of a con man. I'm taking checks and open up bank accounts and writing checks. So being a con man also means you have some pretty good sales ability, which is more than accurate. I've spent my life in sales and always being one of the top performers. So who knows what would have happened? I know what I wouldn't have happened. I wouldn't have met my soulmate, or maybe I would have. Maybe I would have came back and met her and fate was meant to be, which I think it might have been. I could tell a story about that also down the road, which may be part of this vlog, these little stories. But yeah, maybe I'd be, back then I'd have a house there now. I would have been in the sunshine the entire time, and I wouldn't, it would have been a whole different life for me, different surroundings. And part of this vlog is retraining pain is not just about exercise, but it's also retraining my mindset in that anything is still possible even after 60. That, it's easy to say, well, I've made my bed, I'm going to lie in it, finish off the period of time that I have where I am, not take on those adventures. And I don't think I want to do that. I want to, even though I don't have necessarily the energy, and I have things to lose now. When you're younger, you have nothing to lose, so you can do anything. But taking these trips and going to California for the second year is, to me, a really, it's a retraining of pain, and I'm not sure about retirement, which could be, again, another topic, because I have so many mixed feelings about becoming retired and if I want to, and is there a real benefit or is there more negative involved with it? Can you even afford to do it? The one thing I will say in closing up on this is that what I find, and this is interesting, is I find the year gets extended when you go away for 2 months, or at least last was 3 months. I want to do 3 months, but Alice only wants to do 2 months. But we'll see. Maybe she'll change her mind and we'll extend it a month. She has her routines, all that sort of stuff. So anyway, and when I'm there, I'm still working. So it's not like I'm vacationing. I have my work day, and then she typically has her day and her routine. And when we go to Southern California, it breaks up that routine. But the one thing that's really cool about it going is that it extends the year. It's like you have 2 lives in one. So there's that California life, and we missed all the snow. And last year there was a huge amount of snow. Our neighbors, when we got back, all said, man, you picked the right year not to go. And then the other thing, so aside, it's also a different world. You're not vacationing there, you're actually living there, which means you're going to the Costco's, you're going to the Walmarts, you're going to the little stores, you're going to the restaurants, So in a vacation, if you're there a week or 2 weeks, you really aren't living the life that the people there live. But when you spend time there, now all of a sudden you're assimilating into that culture in that area, which to me is really cool and something that I found unexpected. And when people say, when I get older or whatever, I want to travel, to me, I saw it on a YouTube video. Someone said something similar, is travel is, what travel is, where it really is interesting, is when you actually stay at a place for a prolonged period of time and start living like the locals. And so that's what we find. Anyhow, this is a longer video, and it's interesting talking to you on this video as I ride, and you don't see it, but I'm been looking at Copenhagen, and actually I got lost because it looks so much like California. Beautiful greenery, really flat roads. But this discussion and story that I just told, when I was in heavy training, I met a lot of guys out in the escarpment, which is up here where everyone rides, the Niagara Escarpment. People like Jamie and Shaw and Alan. I met all these guys just riding. They'd pull up beside you and they would ride with you. And what I'm talking about, what I just described and told this story, that's what we did. Have someone riding beside you, and I would tell them the exact story that I told now. Let me tell you about a time I ran away from home when I was young. Let me tell you about California. Let me tell you. And then they would have their stories, and they would tell me stories, and I would listen, and it would go back and forth. And it's like one of the greatest things. It's just riding, and it's an incredible thing when you ride with someone and you tell stories. I don't know what it is, and you can probably feel it. Because once the endorphins get going and you're starting to, it does something, opens up your mind. You start visualizing things and you really internalize it. So when I would hear stories from my friends, I would start internalizing it in such an empathetic way that I was living it as closely as they were. So hopefully the story I told gives you an insight. Maybe maybe I'm all wrong, or maybe you've got to ride your bike or do exercise to get into my mind on this. But that's it's an interesting thing. I may start doing some telling stories on my bike, because it also kills a lot of time. I'm just looking, I've been cycling now for 43 minutes. So 45 minutes of me yakking and talking, telling stories. I just ate up 45 minutes of an hour and 45-minute bike ride. So I only have an hour to go. Anyhow, that's my story of how I made it, almost made it to California, eventually made it to California at 59. And I'm going to be there in one more week. Next Friday, I am going to be in California, arriving late at night, unfortunately, but I am going to do my first bike ride Saturday morning, come hell or high water. Over and out. Retraining Pain. I hope you had fun listening to my story.